Thank you to the witnesses. Mr. McGuinness, you are not the first chair of the council, the Fishery Council of Canada that I've had dealings with. I don't know if you're familiar with Gus Etchegaray. He's a former chairman of the Fisheries Council of Canada. He's also former head of one of the largest integrated fishing companies in Canada, what was Fishery Products Limited before Fishery Products International. I helped him write a book prior to being elected to politics called Empty Nets, How Greed and Politics Wiped Out the World's Greatest Fishery. And of course I'm talking about the cod fisheries off Newfoundland and Labrador. There's a story in the news today, as a matter of fact, about how the Northern Cod Moratorium that was introduced in 1992, that was supposed to last 2 years, will probably last at least another 10. And if it lasts at least another 10, that in total will be 33 years. What was supposed to be 2 years. Now, in that book, Mr. Etchegaray, former chair again, sir, of the Fishery Council of Canada, he talked about how, writes about how overfishing, illegal fishing, mismanagement destroyed the cod fisheries. One of the big criticisms after the institution of the '92 moratorium was the fact that while Canadians stopped fishing inside the 200-mile limit for northern cod and other species that were in danger, the fishing outside the 200-mile limit did not stop and continues, in fact, to this day. There are foreign vessels charged regularly outside the 200-mile limit, but the question has been raised about what penalties are actually instituted by the flag countries, and my answer to that would be practically nothing that stops them from further overfishing. Illegal fishing inside Canadian waters is not seen as a problem because the Canadian Coast Guard, because our regulatory forces, they take charge. Any vessels that illegally fish are brought to court and they're prosecuted. Illegal fishing outside the 200-mile limit, and it's different from the United States. The United States, you're right, has the Magnum-Stevenson's Act, but it doesn't have a continental shelf that extends outside 200-mile limit in international waters. Canada does, one of the few countries in the world. I'm telling you something that you don't know, Mr. McGuinness, but I'm sure a lot of people around this table, they don't know, particularly on the other side, Mr. McGuinness. So the question I have for you is, illegal fishing inside the 200-mile limit is not a problem, but it is a problem outside the 200-mile limit right until this day. What will this act that has been years, we've been waiting for this for years to be instituted, and maybe years before it is instituted, what will this do to help Canada charge and prosecute foreign vessels outside the 200-mile limit where the real problem with illegal fishing exists? What will this do to stop that? And I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, if I hope I wasn't speaking, or hope I was speaking loud enough for Mr. Kemp. Mr. Speaker, I know he mentioned yesterday in the House of Commons he has a hearing problem. I hope that he not only heard me today, but listened. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the question. Just one clarification. Gus Etchegaray, you're quite right, was chair of the Fishery Council of Canada. I'm the president, so we have a current chair. It's Rob Morley from British Columbia. Yeah, in terms of, I just to say that no question, if you will, that say, for example, with the decline of the cod fishery in 1992 and whatever, obviously Canada introduced a moratorium with respect to fishing for Atlantic cod, and then under the UNFA agreement, in terms of, say, for example, the NAFO organizations, NAFO actually, if you will, adopted a moratorium on fishing northern cod roughly in sequence. So both the NAFO organization and the Canadian fisheries management regime with respect to northern cod were basically having moratoriums. Now, as you say, illegal fishing, will occur, and basically the powers that we have are basically through participation in NAFO, where, if you will, Canada's Coast Guard and so forth can if you plus aircraft and all this, do the surveillance and basically hopefully identify those fishing vessels that are illegally fishing for whether it's cod or whatever, and then proceed with that. Now, but the issue is, you're quite right. In terms of this, I'll pass it to David to further comment. But this agreement does not in itself enhance or diminish, if you will, the powers of Canada to operate not only in its own waters, but also operate within the regional fisheries management organizations such as NAFO. What it is, it's basically gives further responsibilities and duties with respect to the importations of fish products or transshipments of fish products through Canada. So that's what it's targeted at. It's that straightforward. In my view, that's straightforward. David, you may want to add to that.
I think Patrick is quite correct. It doesn't change a lot of what's behind the Coastal Fisheries Protection Act and the NAFO treaty generally, but what it does do, though, is enhance it somewhat, because now it's targeting the market for the product. So ultimately, IUU fish, or fish that are caught in that manner, the intention here is to try and make it more difficult for such fishers to land their product, at least within NAFO countries, and so, or in countries which are party to the Port State Measures Agreement. So Canada is doing its part to do that. Certainly I would agree that there's not a great deal of illegal, unreported, unregulated fish being landed in Canada, but this, if implemented across all countries that ratify the Port State Measures Agreement, will at least provide some further augmentation, one piece at a time.
What I may add.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Mr. Camp.